Hello, everyone. Welcome to AXSChat. Today, I'm the only host. Antonio is having technical problems, and so he might join us whenever the technical problems get better. And Neil is visiting his parents, and his father is 80 years old today. So congratulations to Neil's father. Today, we have Ryan Graham. He's the CTO for Texthelp, and they have been around a long time. And so we're going to have a really rich conversation about, what they do, but also where they've been and what they've learned along the journey. So welcome to the program.
Thanks, Deborah. Really great to be here. And of course, happy birthday as well to Neil's father.
Yes.
So I'd like to start off just with a little bit just about myself and what I do here at Texthelp. So as you said, I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at Texthelp. Just a bit about me personally, I am from a family of teachers. So my dad has a degree in special education. He was a special educational needs teacher for a lot of years. My sister is also a special educational needs teacher as well. And my wife is also a primary school teacher. So I'm from a very big family of teachers, surrounded by teaching all my life. Unfortunately for me, though, I am not a very good teacher. So that wasn't a job opportunity or a career opportunity for me. But what I was passionate about is I was passionate about software and helping kids and helping students, helping them in their day-to-day lives and helping kids with disabilities as well in particular. So that is what drove me to Texthelp. It's just one of those companies that really does truly make a difference in people's lives through uses of assistive technology software. So a little bit about Texthelp then and our background. So we are an assistive technology company. We create software that helps everybody across the globe be understood and also to understand as well. So we create apps that help people read, write, and understand content, and whether that's their own language or whether it's mathematics, for example, as well. The company itself was actually founded by our current CEO, Martin Mackay, well over 20 years ago now, actually. The whole sort of journey for us started and it started for Martin whenever his father actually suffered a stroke and he struggled to communicate. And Martin, obviously, as a technology enthusiast, just saw an opportunity here to help his father communicate better. So he developed a piece of software that he could give to his father that he could type on a keyboard and very, very quickly build out a sentence so that he was able to effectively communicate. And from those beginnings, that was again over 20 years ago, we've built out our software over those years, and that really formed the basis of our product, Read and Write, that we have today. So we've been around for a long time. We've been, helping people building out accessibility products for a long time. And since then as well, we've also been building out a whole suite of products, helping people with not just reading and writing English, other languages, and as I mentioned, mathematics as well.
Yeah, I know that. I've known about Texthelp for a long time. I know with my former company, Tech Access, we actually had Browse Aloud loaded on our site because we really appreciated what you were trying to do. And when you say you're an assistive technology company, I know that's part of the journey. And because when I was working with Texthelp Browse Aloud, many years ago, we were saying you were an accessibility company. Right. So one thing that you could do was you could put Browse Aloud on your website and the website would read to you. Now, of course, it wouldn't solve all of your other accessibility issues, but it could solve these issues, part of the issues, right? So that one thing that we were suggesting to clients is this is one way to solve part of it while you're working on the rest. But at the same time, I know that started causing confusion. And there's a lot of confusion in the marketplace right now with like overlay tools, which are not an overlay tool. But do you mind talking a little bit about that journey? Because
you're absolutely right. That is so important that the distinction is made there because Browse Aloud is there to offer a tool to help people if they need it, or for people who don't know that they need it. There are a lot of people out there who do not have access to assistive technology software, and a lot of people that don't know that those tools are available, and that's where Browse Aloud kind of steps in. But it does not try to be the magic solution. In fact, as you well know, Deborah, there is no magic solution. There is no one button, one piece of software that you can drop on your website and ta-da, all accessibility issues are fixed and it helps everybody everywhere. That's just not that's not how the world works.
Even though providers say that is the way it works, just saying.
Yeah, they do. Some
Just
people
saying,
do.
which is so confusing because really, wow. But that is what they're saying. They say that all the time.
They are. And on the face of it, if you're, for example, in an organization, that sounds good, doesn't it?
Yes,
You know, it sounds like something you would want, but
my magic butt. Yeah.
But there
Yeah.
is a danger there, and there are so many trade-offs there as well, which is, you know, that's why we decided with BrowseLite not to go down that route. In fact, just that's kind of like a journey that we've been on really at Texthelp. I mean, we started off with BrowseLite, and we are at the same conclusion you're at, Deborah, where it's not the only tool. You need to have more tools in there, and not just tools, but people behind those tools as well. So that's the journey that we're taking that product on now. So what I kind of want to talk about with you today, and seems apt that we would talk about this together, you know, given your work in the field, is about building an accessibility culture within organizations. And like we all know that, you know, being accessible is the right thing to do. We all know that, but we don't always know how it is that we can get there. And much less do we know how we can build a culture for how we can get there as well. Because a culture is one of those things that a culture can just happen. It just happens overnight. You can't create a culture, right, but you can lead it. You can lead it in the direction that you want to go. And the start of that journey, I think, is really who starts that journey, who does it. One of the questions I always get asked actually as a CTO is, who looks after your accessibility in Texthelp? Just that one person, the one accessibility person. You know,
that one person, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that even the accessibility in itself, that's an all-encompassing single term. So whenever I hear that question, I usually break into a smile and then have to clear about 30, 45 minutes of my calendar as I go off on a rant. But you know, accessibility is no one person's job. It's everybody's job. Throughout your entire organization, everybody has a small part to play in making sure that your organization is more accessible. So if you don't have an accessible workplace, for example, you're creating a culture in doing that where you don't want to attract top talent, or you don't want to attract talent from disabled people. Right. If your website is inaccessible, then you're turning away people who may rely on your website for information and products. If your social media is inaccessible, you're excluding disabled people from the conversation that everybody else is having. Right. So, you know, accessibility is the heart of everything that we do in the workplace. So it can't be boiled down just to one person, and it can't be boiled down just to one thing. So to answer the question, like who looks after your accessibility, that's everyone in your organization. But obviously you need management at the top of that to say it is a focus for us. It is a focus for our culture, and it is a focus for our people that we can improve our inclusion and accessibility throughout the organization. So at Texthelp, actually what we've done is we sort of stood back. Obviously we're an assistive technology company anyway. So we've been doing things obviously over the years that make this an inclusive and an accessible place to work. But we wanted to step back and really give us a definition of that. How do we be better as well? How do we get to being a more accessible and a more inclusive organization? And so we put together a 10-point, what we call the accessibility journey of Texthelp. Because every organization is on a journey of building culture. So this is our own personal journey. And you can actually find out more about our journey at text.help/journey. There's a lot to it, loads of points. But it's essentially 10 points that are going to help us become more inclusive and a more accessible organization. And that involves there's one point in there for everybody in the organization: developers, HR, content specialists, marketing, design, everybody. And it involves all aspects of the organization as well. And things that you might not even really initially think about, like the documents that you're sharing within your organization. Are they accessible? Can they be read by screen readers? can your staff and your employees understand those documents? It's not just your public facing website, it's everything that happens within your organization. And I think as well, I mean, I know you've done an awful lot of work in this field, but having a clear plan on how you can meet those goals and having easily achievable goals as well is the first step to driving cultural change across the organization.
I agree. And when I wrote my book, Inclusion Branding, I talked about that. I also talked about it in the book before that, Tapping into Hidden Human Capital. And I did what it sounds like y'all have done, in that I explained that accessibility belongs to everybody. But as you're pointing out, we all have different roles to play with accessibility. You're the chief technology officer. You have to make sure you have the right processes in place and the right quality control, quality assurance and testing. The marketing people have to make, so everybody's responsible for it, but they have different roles. And I would be very interested in your 10 points. Can we find those on your website? Is that
Yes,
part
you
of
can.
your
Yeah, they're on our texthelp.com website, and there's a
Okay,
short link as well, text.help/journey, and that will
okay,
show you
good.
the 10 points and a little bit of detail about them as well.
Well, I just think it's such an important point, and I want to dig into some more in a minute, but I want to just talk a little bit about the confusion in the marketplace. And so I, of course, am in the States, and you're joining from Northern Ireland. And here in the States, we have a lot of investors stepping up and wanting to buy companies like Texthelp. As a matter of fact, I'm sure you're already being approached. And there's quite a few dollars that, are being spent. I mean, the Essential Accessibility just got a $55 million investment. And then Level Access, I think, got like 35 million or something. And so we're seeing money being spent, but I will say that I don't necessarily see the community of people with disabilities benefiting from the money that is going into these companies. And sometimes I feel they actually hurt our community because we lose what we already have, which is fine. There's just confusion in the marketplace. And I still have investors reaching out to me all the time, asking me who to buy. And I continue to remind them, please also remember to look outside the States. We see a lot of innovation happening outside the States, but there's so much confusion at the same time. And I was speaking, and I'm not going to say who, because it would be so inappropriate to, but I was speaking to somebody yesterday who just got into the accessibility field. And so they were like, oh, I have a grandchild with autism, which is great. I have, my daughter has Down syndrome. My husband has dementia. I myself am a person with disabilities and visible disabilities. So I welcome everyone. Everyone's welcome. But what worries me sometimes when these people come into the field and they do not understand the nuances of the field. For example, this person said, he had a friend that was wheelchair bound. Well, people are not tied up to their wheelchair. They're wheelchair users, and it's just a little nuance. But the community doesn't like, there's a lot of work that we need to do. But so once again, come into the field, yay, but please be responsible enough to learn the field so that you don't accidentally do more damage than good, which we see happening right now, especially in the States. And then, of course, we're litigating everything. We're suing each other in the States, which is good in a way, because if you're not going to make things accessible and I'm going to have to hit you over the head with this stick to make you do it, I'm sorry that I had to do that. And I'm sorry that you didn't understand that you actually have a very powerful business case for doing it, as you said, but we're going to make you do it in the States. And so I am proud of us, at least, for doing that, even though I think it's ridiculous we have to do it. And so I know that Antonio is having technical problems, so he's trying to come back in, but also what's confusing, and I know this is part of y'all's journey, is that we have providers stepping in and saying, all you have to do is put this overlay tool over, and you're done, woohoo. And all you need is put this assistive technology tools here and you're done. And it's just not true. And I've had people say to me, at conferences, they'll come and get me because they know I'm talking about this, and they'll have big signs behind them advertising, like behind you right now, Matt, you have Text to Help logo. Hey, hello, Antonio. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Deborah.
Oh, yay. Welcome. Welcome. I told the audience that you were having technical problems. So just to continue this point and then, but so what's happening is that they'll say to me, oh, we have this wonderful overlay tool. And, all you have to do is just do this one thing and you're done. And I'll say, okay, great. That's all you have to do. And this particular instance, they had behind them on the sign behind them that you're fully accessible and you're 508 compliant, which 508 is of course the US thing. And so I, being a little bit cheeky, was like, great. So all I have to do is put this overlay tool and I'm totally done. So all my videos are captioned. Well, no. Well, all my PDFs are accessible. Well, no, all my apps are accessible. Well, no. I'm so confused because it says behind you that I'll be fully accessible and 508 compliant. Well, no. All it does, and so it causes a lot of confusion. And I know that was also part of y'all's journey, which you talked about. But why did Text-to-Help say, no, we don't want to do that. We want to help. We don't want to confuse. But I was just wondering if you would explore that. And then,
Yeah,
I want
I'd love to actually, because as you said, if there was some sort of magic algorithm we could use to make everything accessible in every way possible, that would be fantastic. Texthelp have been doing this for 20 years. We have been talking to people with accessibility needs and disabilities for 20 years and gathering feedback every day. Every single last one of our products has a button inside it that you will be able to click on or open and give feedback as a disabled user. And we get that feedback and that goes straight into the product, straight into our product owners, straight to us. And we've been looking at that. And there is so many things in there that you would never be able to do with one line of code. Not for people with, you cannot cover everybody with an accessibility term. People with cognitive impairments, motor impairments, visual impairments, temporary disabilities, long-term disabilities. There are so many different ways that you need to help people that no one tool, no one line of code is going to fix absolutely everything for you. But what you can do is you can give people the information necessary to create the most accessible experience for your users. You can give them the knowledge necessary, and you can give them the ability to spread awareness as well of accessibility. And that is by far and away the most powerful tool. You can have much more powerful than any other one-liner special toolbar. As you mentioned, Deborah, as well, in the past, we had our Browse Loud toolbar, which added on supports on top of your existing supports. So they weren't designed for replacing a screen reader, for example. You would still need a screen reader and Browse Loud side by side. Your website still needed to be accessible for Browse Loud to even work on your website. So what we have done is we've obviously noticed that there are some gaps. People are saying, well, how do I make my website accessible? And we would sit down and give them a little bit of training, explain how to do that, how you can make it a little bit better. But there was obviously a gap there. So what we've done is we've kind of evolved the idea of Browse Loud. It is no longer just Browse Loud on its own. We call our new product Reach Deck. And it is actually a suite of tools that it doesn't fix anything, okay? But what it does is encourages and promotes an accessibility culture throughout your entire organization using terms, using tools, I should say. And so that's sort of both in the way of being technically accessible. I like to use the word technically accessible, which is stuff like WCAG compliance, making sure your content is structured correctly on your website, and then content accessibility as well, which is writing content that your audience can understand and writing it in a way that they can consume as well. So we've got a suite of tools that allow you to make your website technically accessible and your content accessible as well. We've kind of broken it into 3 different tools. The first one, I'm going to talk about Browse Loud last because it's a nice to have at the end of the day. But the first tool we have in here is called the Auditor. And what the Auditor does is helps you with that technical accessibility. It goes and scans your website and it identifies any WCAG 2.1 compliance errors you've got there, and it will report those to you. It does not fix them for you. It is not magic. I wish it was magic, but it is not, because even the WCAG guidelines themselves, not everything can be fixed. automatically through a machine. It requires somebody looking at that and and making their own decisions, having human input at the end of the day. But what it does do is quickly highlight areas of your website that are obviously inaccessible and give your developers the information that they need to be able to fix it quickly. Because that's part of that idea of, making these, you don't want a magic bullet that hides away all that information from you. You want something that trains your developers. This is how you spot issues. This is how you identify them, and this is how you fix them, so that they can then, whenever they're developing, make sure that those issues do not creep into their websites. And better than that, it gives you all this information, but at the end of it, it generates a report for your entire website. And we all know how much management loves reports. They love reports. They can't get enough of them. And so that report will tell you exactly what areas of your website need work, and what areas of your website you need to spend time in, and perhaps even deliver training to your staff on how to make that part of your website accessible as well. So that auditor helps you then refer back to, in our case, our 10-point plan, and say, okay, well, how far along are we in creating a WCAG accessible website? Report, great, we're not there yet, we need to get better. And we also have to remember that your website doesn't just be finished one day and is magically accessible and stays that way forever. It's a constantly evolving thing. You need to be making sure that the new content you're putting on there is accessible, and that there's no other errors that have crept in, and if any changes in your website are again accessible for your end users as well. So not only does it check for technical accessibility, but it also checks for that content accessibility as well. So it keeps an eye for things like the use of complicated phrases, or what we call in the UK like jargon words, especially for English language learners as well. Who sometimes struggle with the English language. If you're putting in sort of colloquialisms into your website, it can be very difficult for them to understand. It also keeps an eye for like unnecessarily long sentences. So people like that with memory impairments, sort of, will want to information chunked into smaller pieces, smaller consumable pieces for them as well. So it keeps an eye for those as well. And reading age as well, in particular, is very important. And one of the stats that I always say to people as well is that in the UK here, the average reading age of somebody in the UK is just 9 years old.
Wow.
So if you're writing content on your website, for example, and say you're a government website or a local council website or something, and you're writing your reading age for somebody who's 18, 20 years old, there is a good chance that 50 to 70% of the people who need that content will not be able to understand it. And they will go somewhere else for that content, or they might not get it at all, and that is not leveling the playing field in any way, shape, or form. Everybody has the right to access that information, and it's our responsibility and organizations' responsibility to make sure that they can as well. So that the auditor scans your website, but that means that those problems have happened. They're out there. Your users are seeing them right now. So how do you sort of prevent that from happening in the first place? Well, training is an obvious thing. Reach out to your accessibility experts. There are loads of them in the field, as you well know, Deborah. There are loads of them out there in the field that can give you advice, give you training, how to be more accessible and how to create an accessible website. But from a content accessibility point of view, that is something that is, that we can manage with tools. We can help you identify things and help you make things better, write your content for your audience. That's where we've introduced our editor tool in ReachTech. So that's a tool that can be used by anyone in your organization that writes content. If you're using a word processor, if you're using Microsoft Word or Google Docs all day, you can use the editor. And in real time, it will tell you what jargon words you're using, what confusable terms you're using that people might not understand. It'll also give you helpful metrics like spelling, punctuation, and grammar. So the objective there is to catch those errors before your users see them, and present something to your users that they can understand, they can access, and then they can consume. So to make sure that we have that level playing field for absolutely everybody.
Well, I know that Antonio has a question, but I think the thing that I was impressed before by Browse Aloud, but I haven't talked to you in years, but you make the website more usable and accessible as people are making sure they're following all the WCAG rules and the programming in the background, which is powerful. Antonio, let me turn it over to you, and welcome to the program, Antonio.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Ryan. No, I was talking with some companies in Germany this week about services from text to speech, speech to text. I was on an event on privacy and security under the banner of the European Commission this week. So my question goes into those two areas, considering that you are dealing with text to speech and speak to text. How can we make sure that the privacy of the users is at upfront, and how we also make sure that that sometimes this is something that we observing is that people working in information and security sometimes disregard the needs of users with disabilities, and they don't even try to make an effort to understand the importance of this type of services, and even without doing any kind of assessment, they're already blocking them. So is also a level of ignorance and awareness that needs to be created. So how can we make sure that security that we all care about doesn't limit the rights of people with disabilities from just doing their work?
Such a really good question, Antonio. And you know what? I actually used to be a security architect at Texthelp in my previous role. So it's another thing I care, passionately about is security and privacy. To answer your second question first about how do we stop those barriers from happening? If somebody needs that piece of software, they should get it. If they need something to understand the content, they need something to help use it, they should get it. And that is a cultural change. That's what we're talking about here. That needs to be not just siloed away that, oh, developers deal with accessibility, because everybody, security, and the people who run your network, the people who authorize your applications, and your senior, everyone, right from the board members all the way down to across the organization, should know that accessibility tools exist and are a requirement for people. They really are. And to your first point there about the privacy, specifically with speech to text and text to speech tools as well, that's something we're absolutely looking at for Browse Lite. I don't want to go into too much detail about Robot and future plans, but rest assured, the content on the website and leaving, particularly obviously in the realms of the EU, is something we've been looking at. And I think actually technology is now at a really good standard whereby we have access to local text to speech and local speech to text, so that we don't need to go to the cloud for everything. Things do not need to leave users' machines. And if we have that, and we have that in place, so we've created the culture, we've removed the technical barriers to giving access to the people the tools they need. You're going to be doing very hard as an administrator in an organization to say no to that, I think, nor should you.
No, I was quite worried because, as you might know, around the European Commission is organizing working groups to work on track on security, on accessibility, on privacy, and these groups, they tend to influence sometimes policy, and often there's we have the accessibility advocates on the accessibility groups and not on this particular group. So when there's a conversation on privacy, there's nobody that say, hey, sorry, we need to address this. And this happens, I've been tracking events, over the last couple of years. It's systematic. And it's quite, and sometimes we're talking about events that are sponsored by MPs. So I think and we have in place the European accessibility guidelines, and there's always this fact that people forget that needs to be a discussion on the topic of accessibility and privacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Systematic is exactly the right word to use. That's exactly what it is. And it goes back to the point that Deborah was making earlier on as well about people trying to create accessibility solutions without listening to the people with accessibility needs. And those are the people that you need to be listening to. You shouldn't be trying to push a security agenda with only a security agenda lens. It's not going to work. You need to take the people into account who require those tools to be able to live their daily lives.
So if you looking back to the change of technology that we have been observing in the last couple of months, and we know that today some tools that allow people to improve their web experience, they improve massively. They are more present. Sometimes they don't address the issues of all users, but at least they fix some small parts. You can have text to speech on your browser, and it works fine. It works for some people. It might not work for everyone. So the tools are here. So if you work particularly in the area of education, because today we have so many kids doing part of their tasks from home, and sometimes parents are not that digitally skilled to best advise them in terms of the tools. What do they need to consider to make sure that if children have certain needs, that they are able to help them, and at the same time they are able to make sure that the kids don't feel frustrated because they're not able to learn, or they're not able to use the tools that were predefined to them? So what solutions are out there that can help families?
Yeah, really good point as well, Antonio. So obviously, as a assistive technology, so we have a lot of products for students and for teachers as well. So we've obviously observed over the past 12 months the issues that students are coming into, and the issues that parents as well are coming into. One of the big issues really is a lack of access to devices. This is all well and good for us saying that, let's all work from home. We've all got some nice laptops, cameras, but whenever the students go home, they might not have access to those things. And if they do, there may be one device per household that is shared between a number of people. I very often see technology companies say, we've got an iOS app, nothing else. That's it. Nothing for Chromebooks, nothing for Android, nothing for any of those other platforms. And if you're doing that, you are excluding access for one child who may have an Android, another child who may have an iPhone or a Chromebook. And if they can't all use the same tools, they are not being afforded the same rights. They are not being afforded the same experience as their peers. And I think that is a real key thing that people tend to overlook whenever they're thinking about how do we deliver our software. Having a solution that works across all platforms is a must in today's technological environment. Another thing as well is, and I haven't really mentioned it today, I'm surprised I haven't, because I always talk about this topic whenever I'm talking about accessibility, and that's the UX of your applications too, because accessibility and UX are the same thing. They are together as one whenever you're developing software. And you need to make sure that UX is not a barrier to your students being able to use it either at home or in the classroom. You need to make sure your tools as well work with other tools. That's very important, because there is no one, as you say, Antonio, no one tool can do everything, but you need to make sure that your tool is compatible with another tool. You need to make sure your tool is compatible with screen readers. You need to make sure that your editor is compatible with other editors and other formats, and being able to be read as well. So I think there's lots of stuff there, particularly in students and particularly over the past 12 months. But those are the key takeaways for me.
I think this is such good points that you're bringing up, especially as Antonio is mentioning the privacy and the security, because it must all be done together. And also, when things are really accessible, it benefits everybody. And that's what we continue to remind people. But I'm curious, Ryan, so it sounds like you do what y'all work with a lot of schools and universities, but are you working with corporations? I'm just curious who your customers are.
Sure. I mean, for our ReachStack product and previously BrowseLoud as well, that is a lot more corporations.
Okay.
And we also have a product as well, a version of Read and Write for the workplace, specifically for workplace needs. And that again goes back to that UX difference between, you know, students who need a particular UX and people in the workplace who need a particular UX. And so like that, we take an awful lot of feedback from people in the workplace as well as students as well. Although having said that, you know, people always tend to think that once you go into the workplace, you leave your accessibility needs behind in school. People tend to always think, you know, for example, dyslexia just stops once you leave school, which it
Right.
doesn't.
No, no.
People who
Will
move into
tell
the
you that.
workplace are still dyslexic.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
still need access to those tools there as well. I think that's very important.
Even more so because you want them to be productive and they want to be productive.
Exactly.
So one thing that we saw during COVID-19, and Antonio alluded to some of this, is we saw here in the States where people with disabilities do not want to identify, if possible, just because, you know, we have disenfranchised people, but we saw more people disclosing that they had disabilities because a lot of people started understanding what we've been talking about all this time. And, you know, and it sounds like your tools could be a very important, because one, I wrote an article a long time ago, I think it was around 2016. And I said, can overlay tools be part of your strategic plan towards accessibility? Because I was hopeful that maybe some of these tools could help people as they were doing the work they needed to do to make sure that accessibility has been implemented through all of the process, all of the DNA of the corporation, the organization. But sadly, a lot of those tools just didn't even do what they said they were going to do. So, but I do believe that your tools could do that. Your tools, it's not going to make everybody accessible, but it is definitely going to make your website, your products, your services more accessible. And at the same time, you do the training and encourage them to still do the work you have to do. You have to blend accessibility into the DNA of your whole organization.
Yep.
So, but right now, I've lost major confidence in most of the overlay tools. Major. I just can't recommend any of them. But I was wondering, do you believe that's true?
I believe there is a place for certain tools to be used to be able to help people to do the things that they need to do, and also then to raise awareness as well that those tools are there, particularly in the workplace. Actually, one of the things we see quite often in Texthelp is workplaces say we don't either we don't have any disabled people or we don't have that many disabled people. And then they get a product like ReachStack or Read and Write, and they roll it out and say, hey, loads of people are using this. What's that about?
Right. What's that about?
Yeah, exactly. And then you realize the power that those tools can have. So because then you make people aware that they do need certain supports. And if you are using certain supports in certain places, then that highlights to the organization, hey, do you know what? People are using reading supports, for example, in our documents really heavily. Why is that? That is because your documents are unreadable. You're using tiny fonts that nobody can read, or your brand colors are things that users cannot see or do not have an appropriate contrast as well. And I do think there, though, that is the key thing, Deborah, is that we can use these tools for good, but we need to use them in the right way. We need to communicate it in the right way, and we need to remember that fundamentally they are not there to solve a problem. They are there to make sure that that problem does not exist in the first place.
Ooh, well said.
Because everybody is entitled to the same experience as everybody else, and the tool should not need to be there. But if it is there, it can be there at the right time, and its job is just to remove those barriers for absolutely everybody.
Right, I agree. I know that the time has gone by really fast, and I want to, first of all, I want to thank our supporters, Barclays Access, My Clear Text, and Microlink. We really appreciate you keeping us on air. But I want to give you the final words. So if you don't mind telling people, how they can reach out to you, what is your website, things like that. But I also want to say that I hear people, one person comes to mind that says, we don't need assistive technology. We don't need assistive technology, and assistive technology is limiting people with disabilities. And if your websites are fully accessible, you don't need assistive technology. I totally disagree with that comment. And I've said that on air because I keep trying to remind this person that I use this, if I'm using a screen reader, I use a screen reader to start my computer and navigate to your website. And so I keep reminding him that I have to have assistive technology, but he just feels it's a scam being put on people
No,
with.
and no, I think we should not dictate what people are going to use.
Yeah,
People need to find what works best for them. If people may have be in a situation for disability in different stages of their lives,
yes.
they can born, and it's important that everyone is able to choose solutions based in based in what they can actually do with that tech themselves. I think
I
that's what we
agree.
need to do.
I agree. And let's give you the final words, Ryan.
Yeah, well, finally, just thank you very much, Deborah, Antonio, and AXSChat in general for having me on today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've actually had a lot of fun. We could probably talk about this for hours
Oh,
on end, but we'll keep it short. So just to remind everybody, our Texthelp website is www.texthelp.com. You can find more about our Texthelp journey at text.help/journey. And just as a last reminder as well, that these are tools, but these tools are to help you drive the culture in your organization, to remove those barriers, because we want to make sure that everybody is entitled to be able to access the content in the same way as everybody else. That's all we want. And you're right, Antonio, it doesn't matter what tools you use to get there, as long as they work for you, that's the important thing.
I agree. Well said. Well, thank you, everybody.
Lovely. Thanks, everyone.